Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ka Fateh. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to an episode. We're going to call this program SaviSeeks, probably named after myself, Dr. Savi. I think it was on the Sikh channel, say a year or so ago, 2 years. It's been going a while now. I've been away. Good to be back. And we're going to be presenting a current affairs program, hopefully every Friday at about this time, 9 o'clock. This particular episode that we're going to be talking to you today about is about the turban issue. And so what does the turban issue actually mean? What we're considering is, if you're a Sikh, you wear a turban, you go on holiday like everyone else, what kind of issues do you face actually in the airport? What kind of situations are you involved in, maybe in your workplace? But really we're going to focus more on the airport issues. What are people doing at the moment? What are the issues? Is there anything that we're doing in terms of European representative to ensure that we get a fair chance? I know when I go on holiday, for example, to the US or to Spain, I almost feel a little bit victimized when I'm actually standing in the queue and eventually I'm put on one side. It happened to me in almost every single airport in the US. I think the US are probably a little bit more mature in one sense, so they've got the TSA rules, but we'll kind of uncover that as we go along in the next 45 minutes or so. So welcome to the show, and I'm just going to get the guests to introduce themselves. I know some of the guests very well, personally as friends, and I'd like to start off with Gurpreet. If you could just go one by one and just tell us who you are and where you come from. Don't worry, it's not a contest. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Gurpreet Singh, and I work as a project manager in telecommunications, and I also do seva at the Central Gurdwara, Khalsa Jatha, London, the oldest Gurdwara in Europe.
Is it like 100 years plus?
Yeah, we're 103 years now.
While you're there, tell us, you've done a book as well, haven't you?
Yes, we've done a book called The Khalsa Jatha British Isles, covering the history from 1908 to 2008.
Wow, impressive. Yeah, I remember seeing in the first few pages there's a picture of Inderjeet Singh, isn't there?
Yes.
As a baby.
Yes, very young Inderjeet Singh.
But that was in the early part of the century. Okay. Let's move on to...
Hi, like Khalsa Bhai Fateh, my name is Jaspal Singh. I'm also from Central Gurdwara Khalsa Jatha, London, in Shepherd's Bush. I do seva there as well, and I'm also representing Sikh Council UK, which has been in formation for the last 10 months now. It's an organization which has been created by over 100 Gurdwaras and about 50 different Sikh organizations from UK for the Sikh problems that we are facing in UK and in Europe. As we go further in the program, we will discuss, like Dr. Savi said, that is there any representation happening in Europe, and we would come forward with what we have done in Europe. Thank you.
One of the things I would say is that, I mean, there are many groups of representatives, whether they're individuals or there's large groups as well. I think there's a group called a Network of Sikh organizations, and you've got to say they all do good work.
Absolutely.
They all do great work, and it's good that we have it. You know, and on all the work that you do.
Absolutely.
I've heard that you've done a lot of work recently in mainland Europe to help raise the issue.
Absolutely.
So, you know, very well done for that.
Thank you very much.
Let's move on.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ka Fateh. My name is Parminder Singh. I come from Reading. I represent, I'm a trustee at the Reading Gurdwara. But I also, like Jaspal Singh Virji here, I'm a member of the Sikh Council. For me, the Sikh Council is a national body, and that is made up of member organizations with a national objectives and aims that we need to take the Sikh agenda beyond our local communities and into the national forum. And I think these are very important steps that the Sikh communities across the UK have come together and decided that they need something of that sort of a stature that will represent us a bit more forcefully and equally compared to other organizations. We've been lacking that in the past. Yes, we've had multitudes of organizations. Some of them have been issue-based agenda, and they've been very good at those issues, fighting for those issues. But I think we need to just move to a different level where we create institutes and organizations which are structures, which are beyond, which are actually nationally representative. And they actually also represent not just the Gurdwaras or the Sikhs or the Amritaris or the Sararis things, but across the whole spectrum of the Punjabis and the Sikhs within the UK. And that hence where the Sikh Council has to play a much more prominent part in I would say the next 50 years of our history.
15, okay. Well, let's kind of carry on this discussion. We've got about 40 minutes worth to talk about. Anyone got any examples? You know, what are we talking about? What's the issue here? Standing in line, being asked to take your turban off, or just general rudeness? Or is there a situation where clearly there's a lack of understanding? I know a lot of questions there, but have you got any specific examples? Gurpreet, for example.
Well, it comes down to a question of freedom. Why should I be asked to remove my turban? People aren't asked to remove other pieces of clothing in a line. Why is a turban being focused on? You know, I've heard stories of bombs being sewn into trousers, bombs being sewn into underwear, but you don't see every single passenger being, or shoes, or you don't see every single passenger being strip searched. But this seems to be very much focused on the turban.
Do you think there's a profiling situation going on here?
Definitely there's a profiling situation. We've had this situation just getting worse since 9/11. None of the people involved with 9/11 wore turbans. None of them were Sikhs even. Yet, you know, straight after 9/11, the first people to suffer the attacks and injustices of that were the Sikhs.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess that there is the confusion, and you could argue as a general point, we are talking about Sikhi as well, that is there education amongst the wider population who are non-Sikhs, or people that, I mean, I've said this before, you know, that, you know, if you go to a church, whether it be of any denomination, whether you go to Roman Catholic or Anglican, when you walk in, you will find leaflets about, you know, what is Christianity, you know, what's it all about. And as Sikhs, we respect all religions. You know, we don't believe in missionary work, which is to push a religion down somebody and say, you must believe this. We believe in mutual respect. But information is the important thing. Even before 9/11, there were still interfaith groups. People did understand each other. And I think one of the things to really understand is, I mean, I think what you were saying to me, excuse me, what you were saying to me earlier on about, is it an education thing from the past?
Yes.
Where leaders in the past, did they know who Sikhs were? Do leaders today know who they are?
I think they may do, but I don't think they understand the significance of the star. Give an example. Churchill made a speech saying, if you can ask the Sikhs to go and fight for you in the trenches, wearing the helmet, wearing the star without the helmet, then you know, then you should be allowed, they should be allowed to wear the star without, and not be, have to wear helmets when they're riding motorcycles. So here's a leader who saw an example of Sikhs in the trenches with himself, and he could fight our cause. Sorry, the new leaders of the country today, they haven't been in the trenches, they haven't seen the Sikhs fight alongside with them. They don't understand the significance of the star. The star is a symbol of a religion, but they don't understand the significance of the fact you can take it off. So yes, people of different faith can take their religious artifacts off. They can't understand why the Sikhs...
Not everyone can, though, because if you were a nun, and so we take the scenario, go back to the airport thing, right? We're standing in a queue, right? So the Sikh guy, and there might be a Muslim lady who wears a hijab or whatever, and then, although the Sikhs wear turbans because it's our rules to wear a turban, right? I believe the hijab thing has other significance amongst the Muslims. And it could be a nun who, similarly, has to wear the nun's habit.
Yes.
Do they ask the nun to take her habit off for a photograph, for her driving license? Do they ask her to derobe in public?
Well, there was an interesting situation that happened in Italy where nuns were passing by and a Sikh gentleman was passing by. The nuns were not asked to remove their habit and the Sikh gentleman was taken aside. At that point it got discovered that one of these small Italian organizations representing Sikhs had told the government there, you can go ahead and remove turbans for surgery.
So what authority has that person got?
Yeah, you see, this is where I would like to come in. And
please do.
what is basically is lack of information for the European governments. If you read the answers they've given us, Claude Morris, we asked Claude Morris to table a question. Claude Morris, MEP from UK,
okay, right.
And he's tabled a question for us in European Parliament, asking the European Parliament that why are Sikhs being screened the way they are being, and they've been targeted. And the answer came back that they're testing the headgears. They're not targeting, for what I understand, they're not targeting turbans. They've, after 9/11, they've just become very tight in security, and they're just testing headgears. And it was the rule was put in on such a haste that they don't realize the Sikhs will be affected because of the turbans as is part of their religion.
But that point is, I mean, going back to what Gurpreet said, that, I mean, people can put it in shoes, can't they?
Yeah,
If they want to put something away.
Can I add a little bit
sure.
here? Generally speaking, if something triggers for them to wanting to do a further checks.
Okay.
So, problem that we have is that we have a qada.
Okay.
So that will trigger
That's an
something.
opportunity for me, actually.
I understand. So that will trigger something.
Right.
And once it triggers something, then they wanted to do further checks. Now, so you talked about the nuns and you talked about the hijabs. If they're not carrying anything metallic, if they're not wearing a massive cross around their neck, and that doesn't trigger an alarm bells, then they're allowed to go past. So based on the Italian Sikhs, we've had some correspondence. They're saying 10% of the Sikhs get caught up in this.
Okay.
And primarily, the starting point always happens to be the alarm bells going off because they're carrying something metallic.
Right.
Now, it can be a kara,
Right.
it can be a kanga with a little small metal bit in there.
Right, okay.
So something that triggers it, unfortunately, leads to further searches on the side. So it's, let's just be slightly careful with regards to, it is, I don't think that they're purposely targeting the start. Obviously there are elements of that in there somewhere with regards to the people, they don't understand the significance of the Sar and the Sikhs, but I think there are other issues which we haven't explored enough to understand why we get caught up in the cycle of saying, right, you need to step aside and then I need to carry out further searches on you.
Okay, so we could argue, if we just summarize these points for a second, we could argue that the point that we started off on, which is more about education, right? The second thing is miscommunication and rapid decision making.
Yeah.
For example, the point that you made.
And it happens with that particular security person who's standing there at the time. It all depends on that person as well.
Right.
I mean, you'll see that mainly these things have happened in Italy rather than in other parts of Europe. And where they have been reasonable, but in Italy they have not been reasonable at all.
I would say that's actually a very valid point, because in a trip that I made last weekend, which was actually from one of the Balearic Islands in Spain, I came back and I managed to go all the way through, which is fantastic, and I thought, oh, it's really good, I'm all the way through. And then just as I was about to put my belt back on, which has a metallic piece on it, the security guy came up to me and he goes, he just went, like this. He couldn't speak, or whatever issues he had. And he went like this, and I said, well, actually, I'm not going to be taking it off. And then he said, would you mind if I kind of just looked at it and just touched it? I said, well, you feel free. If you want to touch that, it's up to you. And he did, and he said it was fine. Now, in the US, for example, when I was in Seattle, or when I was in Washington, D.C., on both occasions, I was penned off separately, right, waiting for all the other passengers to go through, right, and then ultimately the guy got a swipe and did all that.
The swab test.
The swab test. Even the swab test is not really very good, is it?
It's not reliable.
Not reliable.
I've heard situations where there was one lady wearing a hijab who actually worked at the airport, and in fact airport workers are having to go through these same screenings. And she had the swab test done, and the device said there was a bomb.
Okay.
Clearly there wasn't, but
and it's a security official.
So it's not proven to be reliable.
Right.
Where if you're
So
having
haven't
the
they
swab,
got like equipment now? Haven't they got technology where you can just walk through this thing, a bit like that sci-fi movie where you walk through and your
Total
entire
Recall.
Total Recall, yeah. Arnold Schwarzenegger
Not
hands,
all the
you know?
all the airports have that. Some of the airports in the UK have that
Right.
already. The full body scanning system.
Right.
As they're very expensive, so not every airport has it.
Right. That has his own ethical issues as well.
Yes.
Okay, it does have ethical issues as well, because you get to decide whether you do or do not want to go through it. Yeah.
But I think you start off by asking a question, what are our personal experiences? Let
Right.
me just go back a few years before 9/11. When I lived in the Middle East, and I used to travel extensively in the Middle East. Going back to 98, was stopped. In 2000, I was stopped in Saudi Arabia because I was wearing a dasar. So yes, in Europe, it's become, and I used to travel into Europe as well. I never had any issues. Sorry, apart from Italy, they always were concerned about the fact that you're wearing this. They would always want to check. Now, in those days, it
Is
was...
there the method of checking though?
No, I don't think it was a method. My argument was, I know majority of the Italian men smoke. So I would say, look, I don't want your dirty hands on my dasar. As long as you wear gloves, I don't have an issue at all. So as long as you're compliant, in those days you could get away with it by simply saying, yes, you can examine, please follow certain protocols. I think things have become slightly different now. I think the other thing I was going to ask you to say, let's separate this issue into two separate components. One is the security issue at the Sarati airport. Second is the identity issue in certain parts of Europe where you've been asked to remove the SARs to take your photographs down so you can even
Absolutely, they're two separate issues.
They're two separate issues.
Yeah, they are separate
but
issues.
but they're all interrelated. If you don't understand one, you will not understand the other. So if you one department doesn't understand why the SAR is needed,
Right.
when you're taking creating a photo ID, then the other department also will not understand why.
You have a danger also from a political perspective that one person can cite the case to another. They say, well, we do it over there,
Yes.
therefore that gives us the right to do it over there.
We've got to be very careful there.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think those are the important bits that we need to just focus on, and I think that primarily there is a common root problem as to why we are having issues, security issues. I don't think any of the Sikhs who are the SAR-wearing ones and non-SAR-wearing ones do mind the security checks. After all, it's for our safety. I think there are two bits that we want people to be understanding. One, show respect, and make sure that we are not being targeted and not being profiled. As long as there is a balance in the approach, I don't think many Sikhs will mind at all.
Right.
As long as they show respect to the SAR, I don't think there's an issue at all. Where certain parts where we've been asked to remove the SAR, practically removing the SAR is not a big problem. But I'm saying, but if the SAR has the Mand on it, the Maya on it, then obviously that the SAR you can never tie it back again.
How can you? I mean, how can you tie it back? You need a mirror.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think most of the European, the Italian airports do provide a secure room with a mirror in it.
Do they?
Yes, they do.
Right.
Then you take if they're taking the SAR of this type and then saying like, can you just put through a scanner? Fine. There was an issue as to, I think they were, at that one point they were actually, the little trays that they give you, they would take the shoes off and put them in there, and then they would take the SAR and put it on there. And then I think when the Italian Sikhs got together, they sort of argue the point, saying, look, have two separate trays for these sort of things.
Right.
So they managed to achieve that particular aim, objective.
But I feel the fence anyway of the fact that
I agree.
the bug is actually sitting in a tray, going into an X-ray machine. It should never have got to that point anyway.
That's right.
You know.
But I think, I think there's some responsibility on us as well, that if we as a community should have been at the forefront before these decisions got taken, we should have been part and parcel of that discussion.
Can we really blame ourselves though for that? Can we blame? I mean, there's almost this kind of like saying that we're putting our hands up in the air because we should have been there at the time. If somebody passes a law, right, and you get to hear about it afterwards, there's two issues to look at. Number one, should you have enough political positioning to be proactive enough to know that this is going to be on the agenda, and therefore that's about lobbying, right, and the right people in the right place to talk to the right people, or we're just playing catch-up all the time because people of greater power are in positions who mean that they don't really care about us. They don't care about minority groups.
You just said that are we not at the right place at the right time?
Yeah.
Yes, that's true. I tell you, as the Sikh Council, when these issues started coming up very aggressively recently, we created a 5-step system for Sikh turban to be searched.
Very good.
And they are on our website, and they are in Italian, in French, English, Polish, and Spanish at the moment. They are in 5 different languages. They are on website. Anybody who wants to travel anywhere on these countries can download from our website. This is only a guideline. It's not a law at the moment, but it's a guideline for the local security officer who can read what 5 steps need to be taken.
If you're going to Spain, you could print the thing off.
You can print the thing off and take
show to the Spanish
what
guy
we
and go,
want them is basically, the first should be the scanner, the basic handheld scanner. Second is, the first step is when you go through the security gates. Then if it bleeps, then they should use the hand scanner. And if hand scanner bleeps, then you should swap. If the swap also does a positive reading, then you can go to the taking off turban. What's happening at the moment?
In a separate room.
In a separate room. And it's all there. Well, what's happening at the moment is they're going straight for the last resort, which is taking the turban off.
Okay. And do you think they're a bit aggressive as well sometimes?
And they're aggressive. But if they can read in their own language what they are required to do, they might do, they might not do, I don't know.
Yeah, being devil's advocate for a second, the issue that we have here is that I think it's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
I think you've done a fantastic job there. And
Thank you.
a lot of you should be commended for the fact that you've done something to help somebody who's about to fly,
Absolutely.
right, to give them some tools,
Yeah.
right? Now, in the TSA, for example, in the US, they have made an agreement. They've either worked with the Sikh Coalition or the other people out there, and they have an agreement, and they've worked closely with the administration out there to get this passed. Now, you may be doing that.
We are absolutely doing
the
that.
argument back might be from the person that you say, well, I'm not going to follow this because it's not the rules anyway. So
you're absolutely right.
You give me this.
The step has been started working from, the first step was...
I'm not saying that you shouldn't take it with you, I'm saying you should.
The first step we have done is with working with the Ministry of Transport in UK.
Good.
And if we see the result that's come back from the European Parliament, and their answer is, if you can read that to, the answer that comes from the European Parliament is that...
The Commission is in close contact with the United Kingdom Aviation Authority, Security Authority, which are testing alternative methods for screening headgear. The Commission will carefully analyze results from these tests as soon as they become available before deciding whether or not proposing alternative screening measures throughout the EU. In parallel, the Commission is also in the process of finalizing its impact assessment on the possibility of using security scanners at EU airports. The impact assessment addresses inter alia fundamental right issues. So, obviously, for the European Commission to arrive at this particular conclusion, to make particular statements, they are aware of the issues. They are aware of the fact that people are actively working in lobbying them and asking them to relook at this, and the fact that they have had to respond. So, it isn't the case of that that we are too late. Yes, we do end up playing catch up. I mean, I have to say that, and I also have to say that in some respects, for the last few years, or last 40 odd years, we've been very issue-led as a community. And I think this is, I'm not trying to blow the trumpet of Sea Council primarily here, but I would say this is where our community needs to wake up, go to the next level, and realize that we need to start being part of the policy making rather than issue.
What can we do? I mean, there's youth out there. There's other people that aren't necessarily involved in your organisation, right? Now, if I give you an example of, say, civil rights, Martin Luther King, and if you go back to the situation where there was a bus incident that happened, and almost in a way it kind of sparked off a whole revolution of people talking about the fact that they could not have a situation where black people couldn't get the vote and have equal rights. But the difference there was the pressure was on, right? And to my perspective is, where's the pressure? Because with respect, looking at that, that says February 2011, and we're in August, right? So is there a place where somebody can go and update? Can we write emails to the ministers? Where do we have that direction?
Dr. Savi, to your amazement, we had a meeting with Gabriela Kafkas. She's an assistant policy officer in the cabinet of Commissioner Ando in Brussels, in the European Commission, and they handle social affairs ministry. One of our representatives met her, and to our amazement, she said that there has never been a meeting with the Commission by a Sikh person or by a Sikh group, ever.
That was the first
and this is the first meeting, and we have been in Europe for the last, 100 years?
100 years.
Yeah, and
Sikhs were involved in liberating.
She has now given us a lot of leads into the Commission, and she has told us to go and talk to different commissioners of the Commission for Education, the Commission for Citizen Charter, and the Racial Commission.
Very good.
And this we are already working now within the Sea Council, and we also met on 15th of July Mr. Stavros from the European Commission. It's the Council of Europe which handles 47 European countries, and to our and they are a commission against racism and intolerance. So they are the right person to go to if there is any racism happening with your community in Europe.
Right.
What they said, what he said to, I was there to meet him. What he said to us that he had not yet an official letter from a Sikh community anywhere in Europe about your problem in France, about identity on driving license and on the turbine.
Just to expand on what Vijay is saying, that if we can prove through statistical data that there are X number of Sikh families who are being denied the right to drive or own a driving license because of the SAR issue, then there's something they can take up. Sometimes we become very silent in these issues.
Right.
But I'd just like to correct one point. What Vijay said, organizations like Sikh Federation through Europe, they have worked with different departments of the European Commission, European Parliament. So there have been interaction, but I think we've got to appreciate that European Commission, European Council, it's a huge organization.
The same thing.
And so therefore
you could get stuck in there.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
And they can lead you down some alleys unintentionally.
So I think the important part is that when we have issues, we go and try to talk to a particular department. But in some respects, the decision has been taken much earlier on in a different department before it's filtered through.
Yeah.
I think that sort of proves that. So I would say we are growing organically as a community. Our organizations are sort of growing, learning how to step up. And where it was fine for the last few years, 40 years, that we could, the fact that the day we were told that we have to wear a helmet on when we ride a motorcycle, it became an issue. It was, Martin Luther King's, the incident in Alabama. So we came together, we fought, it was an issue, and we won that case. Now as I said before, now we need to just get beyond the issues. We need to be part of the policy-making decision framework and work towards that. Before they hit, give an example. Any time in this country or anywhere in Europe, any laws that are related to religion are even debated or even discussed, certain religious groups will be consulted without fail, because they are there. And they carry weight. They carry a huge amount of weight. I'm sure people like Dr. Indrajit Singh and they have played a large part in this, and they have to be commended for the amount of work they've done over the last 40 years. But I do feel that I think instead of just relying on individuals' hard work and just keep saying, well, okay, Dr. Indrajit Singh is there, or somebody else, another person is there just doing this. We as a society, we as a community just need to step up and make sure this is our collective problem. We collectively address.
But how do we do, so the way that I look at it is that, so if you go to Gurdwara and you've got a committee there as well, and then you can escalate things to the committee, and the committee may be interconnected to other organizations, right? I guess there's two areas here, just to kind of give you a summary element. One is day-to-day problems that you have, right? You can either go to an MP surgery, or you can go to someone in your community if you know where to go, right? And on the more strategic level, so that's more tactical, that's what's happening every day on the street, right? On a more strategic level, you've got organizations that are already engaged, and that is brilliant that they are engaged. Is there, let me ask this question broadly, and I don't have representatives from other groups here to ask, but if we were to say do an outreach and say, if you had some of the executives of those other groups that came together as a kind of a general meeting, and they said, look, here are all the gender items that we have that we need to let's split them up, or let's do a bit of analysis where we can say, well, we're pretty good in this area, but we're not so hot in this area, or maybe we can swap around some of the... Is there that much, do you think there's polarization in those groups, or do you think those groups would come together?
We are working together, absolutely. Absolutely, we're all working together, like Paraminder said, that we are working, we are taking the work that Sikh Federation has done, and we are going forward with that. We're working with Dr. Indrajit Singh, we are working with him all the time. We are
and Dr. Rai as well.
And Dr. Rai as well. So at Sikh Council, what basically we are doing is we're trying to put everything in one UK council, and we have different committees, we have different agendas and different portfolios where we work on. And this is a perfect opportunity. What we feel is that if organizations and even individuals can join us with their personal,
Yeah. Do they need a place to where, like we go back to the tactical, is there a place where they can go to, submit the issues that they've had? I guess what you can have is you don't want to end up in the situation of an ivory tower. There's a tower up there, I can't reach it, it's too high for me to go up. So what's my channel to get there? Now you could argue MPs have got their surgeries. Well, maybe there's an opportunity here for some of these groups to operate surgeries where they can collect some of that information.
That would be a good idea.
We have websites at the moment, we're working on the websites at the moment.
But in reality, when you get Gurdwaras involved, and you got Gurdwaras can act as your local surgeries.
Right.
So if a Gurdwara is a member of the Sikh Council of any organization, then they have the route into the council. Now, the other thing I was going to say to you, I'm just going to pick on two examples, two member organizations. We have the Sikh Federation, and then we have the United Sikhs. We have two different bodies who play on different parts of trying to solve a problem. So Sikh Council works with those. Now, Sikh Council doesn't mean that it has to be, always the Sikh Council has to be the forefront lead and they have to follow. It's primarily you identify a problem, saying, who's best suited to deal with this. And if it's United Sikhs, you have to hand it over to them and saying, right, we'll provide the information.
Yeah, that's great.
Now, obviously, we are young, and there will be a learning curve in how you mature your relationship and workings. But other than that, that's the objectives that have been set out very clearly. That the idea is that we're not trying to duplicate and replicate what exists out there. We're trying to enhance and build from where we are, and then bring it collectively so that we bring all different talents into one place. And then we can see we have a strategy group. The strategy group may be looking at the issues of the South, but in reality, that's also a European issue. So you can
it's an international issue.
Well, absolutely, yes. Yeah. So therefore, we do have a European and an international subcommittee. So suddenly you start saying that what you're debating in one particular set of group of people impacts something else and then something else. That's the beauty of a national organization that collects people and ideas.
Do you think that some of those organizations are powerful enough to influence political governments? For example, let me cite something to you. If the Indian government are about to sign some kind of deal with the French, right, should it be brought to that level, the fact that they have no respect for certain ethnic groups in the community, in the areas that they live? Do you think that should be brought to the table? And it's a bit of a difficult one, but the point being that, we've got Manmohan Singh, Dr. Manmohan Singh, the fact that he's very accomplished and he's great that he's the Prime Minister. You also have the SGPC.
The problem you get on international level is the French government wouldn't like the Indians telling them what to do, just as much as the Indians wouldn't like the French asking them about their human rights records.
I'm not saying what they should do. I'm just saying that there are situations where they're very easy to sign deals between countries when they're not actually looking at the critical issues that are affecting both countries or citizens that may be origin from that country.
That is where we want that councils like, for example, I'm just using the same name as Sikh Council,
right.
That we should be strong enough, because if we have our community backing, then the MPs, the local MPs, wherever they are in Europe, the local MPs should know that there is a body which we need to consult if it concerns Sikh issues. At the moment, what's happening is that we are not there. We are not there. They are totally ignoring us because they don't know what our problems are.
Yeah.
So the way the local Equality and Human Rights Commission UK, they have prepared an article of Sikh 5Ks on it's article on faith, wearing of Sikh articles of faith.
Yeah, yeah.
This has never happened before. I mean, we've been here 100 years, but this has just been created.
Yeah.
So this is a guidance for everybody in the UK, not just in the UK, in Europe, that what are 5Ks and what are our requirements. So this is now, it's happening. So things, and the same thing we are going in Europe, trying to, raise awareness about Sikhs and about our 5Ks.
That's good. And just come back to the point we made before the program started. We were talking about the census, right? And there were discussions about what you do or do not put down. You think if you were to get hold of some of those statistics, that we mentioned statistics before, does that help our discussion about the fact that there are a lot of Sikhs?
It does. It does. Yeah. I think, look, I'm just going to try and bridge the two the points that you just made regarding Dr. Manmohan Singh.
Yeah. It was a little bit confusing.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
I threw it in the mix.
You've got to understand, majority of us, the younger generation of below my age group, we don't see ourselves as Indians anymore.
Right.
We see ourselves British.
Yeah.
Or European.
Or European.
Right.
So therefore, Indian figurehead being a Sikh, that's just by chance, pure luck.
Okay. Well, I did say though, I did also say that there is the SGPC there, and there's also the Delhi group as well, but and there are Sikh organisations who kind of cover international aspects of Sikhi as well.
But Dr. Manmohan just happens to be slightly, as a leader of a country, just on a different pedestal. But I think that's one thing we need to understand. When we talk about, as we talk about Sikh here, we talk about Sikhs, Sikh identity, we talk about Sikh articles of faith, nothing to do with national borders anymore, with regards to where we come from originally. When we talk about census, again, there was a polarization. I have to be thankful for the Sikh channel and the other two Sikh media as well.
Absolutely.
As well as I think a lot of the Gurdwaras played a part, as well as the Sikh Federation played a huge part in trying to raise awareness as to why we should be ticking the right boxes. As a representative of Gurdwara, we had lots of questions as well. Sorry, I'm an Indian. Why can't I just tick this box?
Yes, good point.
And you almost need to sort of start saying, look, wind back. It isn't about the fact that you're Indian, the fact that you were born in India. It's the fact that in this country, numbers do matter. Earlier on in the month, you had the journalist Janelle Singh. He made a really valid point in one of the discussions. He said, you could be a 5-star general saving India from all the invasions from...
And they have been.
have been.
Yeah.
But when the time comes and can win all the medals of valor representing India, but when the time comes, your vote counts for the same number as the person down the road doing something different, totally different.
Right.
Who's never been on the board, never given his life. So it's all about number in the end of the day. And we need to recognize that if we need to make a case, we need to be counted. For us to be counted, we need to participate in understanding why we do certain things and why we need to be counted in a certain way.
So some of the good things that we've spoken about today is the fact that the groups that we have out there that are representing Sikhs, is it brilliant that they're actually working together. Yeah. Commendable, right? And on the other side of it, if you are in a Gurdwara, you should try and go through the management to talk about, if you've got an issue. I mean, tell us, Gurpreet, you're involved in Shepherd's Bush. You get people coming to the committee saying they've had issues or whatever in the general public.
We do get a number of people all the time approaching us with various different issues, and the thing we got to remember is, just going slightly back into the debate, that as Sikhs, we are the litmus test for freedom in the world. Let's forget borders, let's forget what country you're a citizen of. We're global citizens, we belong to the universe. The Guruji, God didn't just create a country, he created everything. And yet we like to put things down to labels. I'm Indian, I'm Pakistani, I'm British. We're Sikhs, we're the litmus test of freedom. If we can survive in a country and thrive in a country, that country then upholds freedom and democracy and liberty. If we have problems, that country needs to question what are its issues with freedom and liberty. And in France, that's a serious issue. That's a country which is based on freedom and liberty. Yet we have a community who are having problems there. And that is how we need to highlight it to the French government. Well, hang on, you're a democracy, you believe
It's a very convenient thing that the French government forgets, the fact that, have you seen that picture, the one with the Sikh troops marching through Marseille, freeing the French from the Germans, I find that very kind of ironic.
Well, what you're getting is that people are trying to play a particular race card there, saying, well, okay, the French have implemented laws because they didn't like the hijab, and the Jewish skull cap and the Sikh turban are just mere sideline unintended victims, and that we should try to separate ourselves from the hijab. But as Sikhs, I find that we should fight for everyone's freedom. If someone wants to wear a hijab, they should have the freedom to wear it.
Whatever their reasons are.
So, whatever their reasons are, if they want to wear it, they can wear it. It's freedom. And that is what we got to encourage. No one tells anyone in France that you can only wear Dior and you can't wear Chanel. No one has those restrictions.
And you're wearing an Yves Saint Laurent suit today, but apart from that...
This is a German one, actually. So the issue comes down to we should all have that freedom. Sikhs are the litmus test for freedom. We stand up for everyone else's freedoms. And as a Sikh, we got to remember we're going to continue to have these problems. Until you see freedom globally for everyone and everyone enjoying life without oppression, we're going to have these problems. And it's been there from the beginning. Guru Nanak was a revolutionary standing up against oppression. And oppression continues today. Some of us might be comfortable and not suffering it, others are, but we've got to learn to stand up to it. And we've got to work collectively. We've got to remember we are a panth. We are Khalsa Panth. We need to be collective. Doing it on a micro level, on a one-man level, a one man can achieve so much. A Panth can achieve a lot more. The Guruji has given us the strength. We need to follow Guruji's advice.
I mean, he's given us, we've got the identity. We've got the things that unify us as one person, as a Sikh through our 5Ks. I always find it interesting. There was a Scottish chef on recently. He's got the most amazing deep Scottish accent, which is brilliant. I love it when I meet different Sikhs from different parts of the world and they've got their real regional accents. Or even in the places that they are, some of the top doctors are Sikhs. Some of the, like for example, I know Ravi Singh from Khalsa Aid, and when you see the things that he talks about and the selfless service that he gives, that's another great thing. It's the fact that people know who we are by the example that we set. And that example is just in our conscience to do it. We just, if someone's fallen over, I normally find the Sikhs, the guy who runs across and says, hey, can I help you, or whatever, and that's kind of built into our psyche. So you know, it's built into our psyche to help other people, but can we help ourselves, do you think?
I think we're getting there.
Yeah.
Sorry, let me take a step back. I think we have helped ourselves, and I don't mean to in any way undermine the roles of some individuals we mentioned before who have been playing a very big part in the last 30, 40 years. They have done a wonderful job. World is changing, and the world is changing much faster than we have realized. And I think we just, as I said before, we just need to step up a gear. And I think what we need to do collectively, I mean, I think we've been having this discussion prior to the show starting.
Yeah. We should have recorded that.
We should have. And there was a really talented young lad from America, Harinder Singh, who made this comment.
From Sikri.
That's
incredible guy.
And I'm so impressed with one comment he made. He said, you know, we are rich individually, but we need to start creating rich institutes. When we start creating rich, powerful institutes, we can start funding people into doing research, into doing policy studies. That's